The discovery of the American continent is often presented as the beginning of a new era for humanity. Concepts such as freedom, opportunity, and civilization are placed at the center of this narrative. However, behind this story lies a much darker and bloodier reality. This reality is the systematic destruction of the indigenous peoples of America, commonly referred to as Native Americans or American Indians. This destruction was not a sudden disaster, but a planned tragedy that unfolded over generations. When Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas in 1492, the fate of the continent changed forever. At that time, the indigenous population of the Americas is estimated to have been between 45 and 60 million people. These were not a single people, but hundreds of different nations, tribes, languages, and cultures. They lived in balance, with the land relying on hunting, agriculture, and trade. With the arrival of Europeans, death, disease, and war entered this world. One of the greatest causes of indigenous death was disease. Smallpox, measles, influenza, and typhus were brought from Europe, and the native populations had no immunity to them. These diseases spread rapidly, sometimes unintentionally and sometimes knowingly. In some regions, more than 80% of the population died without ever seeing a battlefield. Entire villages were left silent with no one alive to bury the dead. This is considered one of the greatest biological catastrophes in human history. However, the destruction of Native Americans did not stop with disease. Land hunger was a central motive behind countless massacres. European settlers and later American authorities viewed indigenous peoples as obstacles standing in the way of expansion. Villages were attacked, burned, and erased. There was no distinction between warriors, women, children, or the elderly. In events such as the Pequot Massacre, hundreds of people were burned alive in a single night. These acts were often justified through religion or framed as matters of security. Scalp hunting was among the most inhumane practices of this period. Certain colonies and states paid bounties for Native American scalps. This policy turned indigenous people into targets rather than human beings. Men, women, and children were killed, and their scalps taken as proof for payment. This was violence encouraged and rewarded by authorities. By the 19th century, the United States government became directly involved through forced removal policies. One of the most infamous examples is the Trail of Tears. Tribes such as the Cherokee, Choctaw Creek, and Seminole were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands and marched thousands of kilometers. Hunger, disease, and cold killed tens of thousands along the way. Many of the dead were left unburied along the roadsides. Starvation was deliberately used as a weapon. The buffalo herds, which were central to indigenous survival, were systematically slaughtered. Millions of buffalo were killed not for necessity, but to deprive Native Americans of food. Starving tribes were forced into submission or extinction. A statement attributed to an American general captures this mentality, clearly saying that a dead Indian was a problem, but a starving Indian was a solution. Alongside physical destruction, cultural genocide was carried out. Indigenous children were taken from their families and placed into boarding schools by force. Their languages were forbidden. Their hair was cut, their names were changed, and they were taught to feel shame for their identity. The goal was to erase native culture entirely. Thousands of children suffered physical and psychological abuse during this process. In the end, between 80 and 95% of the indigenous population of the Americas was destroyed. Tens of millions of people were either killed directly or driven to death. What remains today are fragments of civilizations that once thrived across an entire continent. These events were not isolated conflicts or inevitable outcomes of history, but a long-term and systematic campaign of elimination. When this history is not told, it is forgotten. When it is forgotten, the same mindset reappears in different places and times. The story of the Native Americans is not only a story of the past, but a test of humanity's conscience.